The record reflect we are back in session. Parties and counsel are present. All members of our jury are present. Mr. Doherty, are you ready to proceed with your video?
I think so.
Okay. You can proceed then.
I'm displaying Exhibit 395, and I stopped it at
We can, yeah.
3 seconds. Huh? What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry, 795, and I stopped it at 3 seconds. You were present when this video was taken. Were you present when this video was taken?
Yes, I was.
And was the camera that used color?
Yes.
And were you standing up at the height of Jennifer Mitchell's, where her security camera would be?
No, I was on the sidewalk.
Is that where the camera is when this is being filmed?
Correct. It's a handheld camera with a video setting.
Okay. But you weren't trying to get up to the height of Miss Mitchell's camera?
No, sir.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the Faro scan and what you did with the truck. Did you do the same thing with the neighborhood?
Yes.
How does that work? Explain that to us.
As I explained, so the Faro takes pictures and measurements. You can use it on enclosed objects. You can use it in neighborhoods. It's commonly used in traffic collisions, surveys, stuff like that. So you can take the Faro, the unit, and you can set it up in the neighborhood and get a 3D scan picture of the neighborhood with measurements.
Now, though that Faro scan measurements of the neighborhood and the Faro scan of the defendant's truck, as part of your investigation, did you or your team do anything with those items?
Yes, we did.
Did you do those in conjunction with the Jennifer Mitchell video?
Yes.
What did you do?
We sent them to an expert to see if they matched.
Objection as to foundation as to expert.
Overruled against the root.
Who did you provide those items to?
Dr. Lenny at Cognitech.
Is it Lenny Rudin?
I'm sorry, Lenny Root, yes.
And the name of the business is Cognitech?
Yes.
Back to 795, again, this picture's in color, and do you even know, as you sit here today, what kind of camera or quality camera Miss Mitchell had?
No.
Okay. So you don't know if the camera you used was a clearer, higher definition camera than hers? Do you know that?
No.
Okay. And let me show you exhibit number 796. Do you recognize that?
I do?
Okay, does that appear to be a similar picture to what's depicted on the screen, only in black and white?
Yes.
And the depiction on the screen on 795 is at 3 seconds?
Yes.
I put up exhibit 796. Next to exhibit 418, which has been paused at, I believe it's 11:09. Yeah, been paused at 11:09. Can you tell us what we're seeing there with those two, that being 796 and paused 418 at 11 minutes 9 seconds?
So on the right side, you'll see the still of the video we shot, and you can see, and I'm circling it with the laser pointer, how essentially the headlights and the running lights kind of blend into each other. You also see the reflection off the bumper of the running lights. So on the, I guess it's in the middle, upper middle of the screen, you also see the headlights and then the running lights or the reflection of the running lights on that bumper.
Okay.
This foundation is reflecting a running light.
Overruled.
I mentioned, did you try to get your camera when you took the video that you took of the truck? I mentioned height. Did you try to replicate the distance from where Miss Mitchell's camera would be to where the truck was?
No.
Okay. You were asked some questions about, this morning, about anonymous tips.
Yes, sir.
We have a lot of anonymous tips.
Yes, we did.
And you, when you could, at least when the person was anonymous, you attempted to follow up.
Yes, sir.
Did you receive any tips regarding the defendant?
Yes, we did.
Did you receive tips that the defendant was bragging about the homicide?
Yes.
Objection as to hearsay.
The objections sustained in terms of not offering to prove that that in fact is true, that Mr. Merritt was dead, not but only that the officers received a report or information to that effect to explain what they either did or did not do in light of receiving that information.
Did you receive an anonymous tip that the defendant grew up in the High Desert area?
We did.
Did you confirm that information?
Same objection. Running objection.
Overruling claims that if they, what if anything they did to attempt to either confirm or refute that information.
Yes, we confirmed he lived in the High Desert.
Grew up in the High Desert.
Correct. They grew up in the High Desert.
And that same anonymous tipster said he went target shooting in the area where the bodies were found?
Yes, he did.
Same objection.
Sustained, jury's instructed disregard the last question and answer.
Are you familiar with that? Well, you familiar with the High Desert?
I am.
Okay. You spent a lot of time there?
Yes.
Do people go target shooting out
All the time?
in the area in the desert?
Yes, sir.
How about in the area where we were yesterday, the area of the grave sites?
Yes.
Have you been shooting out in that area?
Yes.
Where at in relation to the grave sites?
If you would have kept going north on that quarry road, you go over some train tracks, and it gets back into the mountains where there's it's legal to shoot and there's a safe backdrop.
And you've been shooting out there?
Yes.
Have you seen evidence of other people shooting out there frequently?
Yes.
You were asked some questions on Tuesday about the last known contact on for Joseph McStay. We call that line of questioning.
You do?
Okay. And the line of questioning was with regards to the information you had as the last time Joseph McStay contacted anyone.
Correct.
And in your answer, you indicated his last known cell phone contact.
Yes, sir.
Would that be the last contact he had with anyone?
No.
Explain, please.
The last person the family contacted was the killer.
Well, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm going to object, and I move to strike, and I would ask to instruct the prosecutor to control his witness to say such inflammatory comment.
Well, the objection sustained on relevancy grounds, there was no mention of who the detective believed the killer was in that question, so there's no prejudicial material, but the objection is sustained.
May I be heard, please?
All right, counsel approach.
You were asked some questions.
We need to wait for the report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, the last objection is sustained. If there was an answer to the last question, it's stricken. The jury's instructed to disregard the last question and answer.
You were asked questions about when the family was killed
Correct.
on cross-examination. And you were asked what evidence you had they were killed on the floor. You recall that line of questioning?
Yeah.
As a homicide investigator, in a case like this, what are some of the challenges you have in trying to pinpoint a time?
Objection on irrelevance, I believe one of those questions was sustained as irrelevant argument.
The objection is sustained on relevance grounds and evidence to 352, and basically calling for a conclusion that is better addressed in closing arguments by both sides based on the totality of the evidence that's presented.
In a homicide investigation, does where it happened matter?
It's part of the puzzle. It's not the be-all, end-all of the puzzle, but it's a part.
And in this case, we've heard a lot of testimony about whether it happened in Fallbrook, whether it happened on Graves. As a homicide investigator, why does that matter?
Objection on relevance. That's that question.
Sustained.
Does the fact that there were eggs and popcorn and unpeeled bananas lead you to believe definitively they were killed on the 5th, the morning of the 5th?
And object as to relevance.
Again, calls for speculation and conclusion that is better addressed in counsel's closing arguments based on the totality of all of the evidence.
I understand that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have no further questions.
Anything else?
Mark exhibit, but parent works.
I'm sorry?
Just if I can mark one exhibit for the questioning.
Okay.
I think it's going to be next to line 797. A couple questions while the judicial assistant is doing that. How many people live in the high desert?
Well, there's multiple towns there, but Victorville has over 100,000, and I would say roughly over 300,000.
So Merritt, brother and sister, two of those 300,000.
Correct, and so
And when you went to the storage, the unit that you had heard about, you talked to a person that worked at the storage unit.
yes, we did.
You learned that the business at that address had a new name.
Correct.
Question, hearsay, relevance.
All of the answer remain.
Were you able to get any records showing ownership of a storage unit by anybody of interest when you visited that scene?
No.
Show you exhibit 797. Recognize that?
Do?
Appear to be a close-up of the Mitchell video of the truck that was captured somewhere in the 11-minute section of the videotape.
Correct.
And I'll show you 796, which you identified as a photograph close-up of the video that was done by the Sheriff's Department, correct?
Correct.
And you're saying these two pictures both show the running lights, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to have these published to the jury just for them to look, Your Honor, since we have a close-up of each viewpoint of the vehicle.
Okay.
I'll start up top. just so the record's clear in the jury's look, the 797 is the one from the Mitchell video, and the 796 from the sheriff's video of the client's truck. Would that be accurate, Detective Smith, or Sergeant Smith?
Yes, that's what's marked on the exhibits.
The record, the jury is finished looking at those two exhibits. Now, Sergeant Smith, the two questions you faced about the anonymous tips, about statements that my client made, remember that part of your testimony on redirect?
No objection, this states the testimony.
Oh,
Remember that part of the redirect?
They were about your client.
You know what part I'm talking about?
I believe so, yes.
Those statements were not anonymous, were they? They were actual interviews of people you spoke to.
No.
No?
Not initially. There was one, I believe the second one, where he speaks about his sister living.
I'm not asking about what the content, but you were able to identify who said,
One of them, yes.
and so those are individuals you can call to testify if you so choose, right?
I don't have the power to call anybody.
But they've been identified, right?
Yes.
Did you take the same steps to identify the person that made the anonymous tip regarding Mr. Kavanaugh?
I didn't need to because the investigation.
The question was, did you take the same steps
No object, he's argumentative.
to identify?
Already asked and answered.
well, the objection sustained is phrased. Your question was,
Did you take the same steps?
the statements regarding Mr. Merritt, or at least one of the statements regarding Mr. Merritt, was from an identified interview.
Right.
And the statements regarding Mr. Kavanaugh were from an anonymous tip.
Right.
So you couldn't make the same.
My question was, did you take the same steps to identify the anonymous tipsters to the statements about Mr. Kavanaugh that you did about the steps you took of the anonymous tips about Mr. Merritt?
The objection sustained as either assuming facts not in evidence or misstating the evidence.
Did you attempt to identify the individual that made anonymous statements about Mr. Kavanaugh?
Objection, same objection, asked and answered.
The objection sustained is cumulative. He was asked that on cross the first time.
One last thing. When you went to the address of Ms. Mitchell, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you took the measurements of her front property in relation to the camera view, correct?
I did not do that, but yes, it was done.
And you wrote a report, I believe, because you were present when someone else did it.
A report was written. It wasn't me who wrote it. It was another detective.
But you were there, I think, in the report, correct? When the measurements were taken.
I've been to Miss Mitchell's residence. I don't know if I was there on the exact date that those measurements were taken and then the subsequent Faro scan was done. Those are different times. But I've been there.
And so if you wish to recreate the distance, the height, all that, you had all the measurements to do that correctly, correct?
Yes, that's what we did.
But you said the video was not from the same angle and distance as the Mitchell video that is shown in 795.
That video was never intended to be this is the same picture from Mitchell's residence. That was a presumptive investigative thing that we did, or tactic did to see if we needed to go further and determine distances and angles and bring in an expert, someone who was more qualified than us in measurements and angles to do that.
Did you create a second video then from the right distance, height, and angle?
Yes, there's a second video. Well,
A video.
no, I don't think it's a video.
There was one last thing, yeah. Regarding the scene visit that was done by the jury yesterday, there was the quarry road, correct?
Yes, sir.
The road that the command center was parked on.
Correct.
There was the wash that went semi-parallel to the quarry road that was adjacent to where the grave was.
Yes, sir.
And then there was a road that connected the wash to the quarry road that kind of weaved back and forth. You know what dirt path I'm talking about? And like the tire marks going to the quarry road to where the scene was that all the jurors and everybody that came there walked along.
Okay, yes.
Now that was not there in 2013, was it?
I believe it was.
That was worn through that path?
That would be a better question for one of the detectives who excavated the grave in 2013, but I believe it was. That's the path the motorcycle rider was going on, in my understanding.
You're not sure?
I was not there in 2013.
Now, one of the things that was done yesterday, if I understand, you know this, that the jurors were driven north of the freeway and then driven south back by the grave so they can look towards the grave area, correct?
Correct. I think you guys went to Dale Evans Road and turned around.
Now, all the sheriff's vehicles, once the jurors left, exited as fast as possible. Was that planned? To have no vehicles there?
Counsel testifying, move to strike.
The objection sustained is assuming facts not in evidence.
Were there any sheriff's vehicles still at the scene when the jurors drove by? You know.
Objection relevance.
Overruled, you can answer.
I don't know what time they drove by.
How long did the sheriff's vehicle stay after the jurors left?
Objection lacks foundation.
Overruled, you can answer if you know.
Okay. I don't know.
Do you know if there was an agreement amongst the teams to get the truck out of there before the jurors drove by?
No.
No, you don't know, or no, there was no agreement.
I'm unaware of any agreement.
Was there a decision made to leave a truck there so they can see perspective of the vehicle at the grave?
Objection vague, lacks foundation.
The objection sustained is assuming facts not in evidence.
Just so we're clear, I think council covered that, I want to make sure. All the pictures that were placed out at the scene and held with the pin flag, were those meant to identify all the items that were found outside of the grave?
Correct. So those were the packet, the exhibits that council had previously agreed upon to mark. So we went out and marked those. There were more things found outside the grave. There were also things found inside the grave that obviously were not marked.
Right. So everything that was marked was stuff that was found above ground by the sheriff's department at the time that was the intent.
That is correct.
Overruled, you can answer.
That is correct.
So pictures of any items on the pins The intent was to recreate the scene of those things being found, not buried.
It's kind of a weird question because the intent was what you guys decided you wanted them to see. I went out there and I placed the flags as per the agreement, as per the scene documentation, and we put pictures of them so you guys could go out there and get a visual. Yes, everything was above ground.
No further questions.
Anything else?
Just a couple, I promise. Not like Mr. Ryan's. I didn't do that.
That's where we left off Tuesday at noon.
I really do that. Just the wee tips or the anonymous tips that you talked about, counsel asked you, I asked you about two. Do you recall the two I asked you about?
Correct. Yes,
Was there more than two?
counsel was referring to as an interview that spurred off of the Earl Grant one.
Okay. Well, let me show you, and I'm just confused. When you say the oral grand one, is that,
Can we approach on this line of questioning
Well,
for an objection?
he can ask a clarifying question just as to, that's what he's referring to. I don't know if he's going to be any follow-up questions.
Afterwards.
That's going to be my objection relevant to my claim.
Well, just it's premature at this point.
so
Go ahead.
of the two I asked you about, one of them you were able to determine who it was.
Later in the investigation, correct.
Okay, and that's because that person gave a phone number.
We actually gave the phone number of Mr. Merritt's sister.
Okay. And that's how you were able to determine who that was.
Yes.
Thank you.
There you go.
No.
Do you know, have any estimate about how many anonymous tips were received during the course of the investigation?
I know I have over 200 pages of reports. I believe it's over 200 tipsters, but that also includes correspondence that the various family members would send. But we're talking We Tip. San Diego has their own tip that's similar to We Tip that you can call in, calls to the station, and America's Most Wanted after it aired from that. NECMEC, the missing and exploited children that Detective Dugall pointed out. So that's all of those together, not just one.
And some of them had theories about what happened, and some of them had alleged to have specific information.
Correct. There were theories from they're in a family band in Nebraska to they're in Mexico.
Lots of different theories.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever attempted to obtain source information from either CBS or any other network news agency?
In my career for this
Yes.
case? Yes.
So how does that go when you request them from such a network?
Well, you generally reach out to the reporter or someone who can find it and see if they have any information. And I guess I might be misstating a little bit because I'm referring to calls and whatnot, but actual user and account information.
No, I mean, like asking a reporter or someone from CBS to give you information about a source of information that they received.
I would object. That's not relevant. That's not involved here.
Oh, if he's had that experience.
I would say specifically no. I've
Okay.
contacted them to request like transcripts and stuff, but not of user account information.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, when we were out at the scene, the photographs that were pinned, that's been referenced, the scene photographs that we reviewed here in court had flags and item markers like A5, A6, B, whatever, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the flags that were out at the scene when we visited yesterday were denoting those particular items, is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then the attempt was, if there was an item B7, and we had a photograph of item B7, the photograph was tagged at the pin to indicate that's what was found at that location, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the court will take judicial notice that those photographs corresponded to the exhibits that were reviewed here in court with various witnesses, as opposed to new or additional information.
No objection.
Okay. Okay. Anything else by you, sir?
No.
Okay, you can step down. I guess you may be back sometime in the future. Do we have our next witness here? Or?
Yes.
Okay, you can call your next witness.
And Your Honor, just for the record, clear, he is subject to recall.
Yes, oh, of course.
Carmen Garcia.
Please raise your right hand and face the clerk to be sworn in.
You do solemnly state the testimony you shall give in the matter and before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead and seat.
Okay.
And if you can state and spell your full name for the record.
My full name is Carmen, C-A-R-M-E-N, middle initial T, last name Garcia, G-A-R-C-I-A.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, who did you work for in 2010?
Metro Sheet Metal.
When did you start working for Metro Sheet Metal?
I believe it was November of 2007.
When did you stop working for them?
I officially stopped in February of 2011, but then I was coming in maybe twice a week to help out. And that I probably left for good in 12, but I can't remember the month, maybe early 2012.
When you started working for them in 2007, what were your job duties?
Office manager.
And what type of-
Invoicing, answering phones, filing, that sort of thing. Paying bills.
Did you have that same title in 2010?
Yes.
Now, as part of your job duties as an office manager, would you also take in various forms of payments that Metro Sheet Metal would receive?
Yes.
And how would you receive payments?
Usually by check in the mail. Or, because we would invoice the client and then we would receive payment by mail, is my best recollection.
Would you yourself create those invoices that would be sent out to various clients?
Yes.
Did anybody else ever create invoices as well?
Not that I recall, no.
So who was the owner of Metro Sheet Metal?
David Cicada.
And did Mr. Cicada, David Cicada, also have a son that worked there?
Yes, Joe. Well, he's David Jr., but we call him Joe.
Okay, so just so we're clear, when we go through the questioning, we'll refer to them by Dave and Joe if that works.
Yeah, that works, because I know him as Joe.
Okay. And in 2010, when you were working for Metro Sheet Metal, did you work Monday through Friday,
Yes.
8 to 5 about?
I think it was 8 to 4, I believe.
Okay. And what type of a company was Metro Sheet Metal?
Manufacturing sheet metal, stainless steel.
At some point while you were working for Metro Sheet Metal, did you come into contact with Charles Merritt?
Yes,
Do you see Mr. Merritt here in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you please point out where he's sitting and identify something that he's wearing?
He's sitting over there with a blue shirt.
May the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant?
Record so reflect.
Do you recall when you first met the defendant?
You mean what year?
Yes.
Or, I would guess 2009 is the best of my recollection.
How was it that you actually met the defendant?
He started working out of the shop.
When you say that he started working out of the shop, can you describe what you mean by that?
He entered into an arrangement or an agreement with Dave to, I think Dave was going to do the manufacturing of the fountains, and then Chase would kind of do the back end, the artistic aspects of the units, and maybe buy light bulbs or any kind of extra, and then did the crating for shipment.
To your knowledge, did the defendant actually work for Metro Sheet Metal?
As an employee?
Correct.
No.
Did the defendant have his own company?
I don't believe so, but I couldn't say. I don't know. Not that I know of. I think he was working with.
Objection, speculation.
Okay.
Sustained.
Do you recall ever hearing about a company called iDesign?
Not to my recollection, no.
Okay.
It might have been. Well,
Do you know, did you also at some point meet Joseph McStay?
yes.
Do you recall when you met Joseph McStay?
Probably a couple of months after Dave started doing business with him. Most of the interactions with Chase.
Do you recall the name of Joseph's company?
I believe it was Earth Inspired Products.
So do you know, or did you have any knowledge as to the business arrangement between Joseph McStay and the defendant?
The business arrangement between them?
Yeah, do you know if the defendant actually worked for Earth Inspired Products?
Objection, foundation.
Sustained calls for speculation or hearsay.
Well, were you introduced to Joseph when you met him?
Yes.
Who introduced you to him?
I believe it was Chase.
And how did he introduce him to you?
I don't recall.
Do you know if they worked together?
Yes.
And you indicated that the defendant had been working at the shop prior to you actually meeting Joseph, is that right?
That's my recollection, yes.
How often would you see the defendant at Metro Sheet Metal?
Pretty much every day.
Now, when the defendant worked for Metro Sheet Metal, were you aware of any restrictions on him being present when Dave or Joe were present?
Objection, Mr. Palmer, question, Ms. Davis testified he worked for Metro Sheet Metal.
All the rules you can see.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. When you worked for Metro Sheet Metal,
Mhm.
you would be there Monday through Friday, you said, right?
Correct.
And you indicated that the defendant would be there almost daily, right?
Correct.
When the defendant would come into Metro Sheet Metal to work on his projects,
Mm-hmm.
were you aware of any restrictions by either Dave or Joe Cicada that somebody needed to be present when the defendant was there?
No, I don't recall any restrictions, no.
Did you believe that he had access to the shop area?
He did.
And can you describe for us what we mean, or what you mean when you say the shop area?
The area in the back of the, well, as you come into the unit, the office is in the front, and then there's a door that leads to a big back manufacturing area, almost like a warehouse.
Okay. And did you work in that portion, or did you have a separate office that you worked out of?
I worked in the front office, but I went back and forth all day.
And on the days where you actually saw the defendant come into the shop, would it be customary that either Dave or Joe would actually be in the shop as well?
I think it depended, unless, because they might have been out on a project.
Okay. But you would be present if the defendant was there, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know if the defendant had access to the shop after hours?
I believe he did.
Wait, are you 100%?
No, I'm not 100% sure, no.
Now, did you ever see the defendant work with anybody else at Metro Sheet Metal?
Other than Joe and David?
Yes.
I think somebody else came to work. His name was Art, I think.
Okay. And what type of
And then,
work?
of course, there was the welders.
Okay. What type of work would the defendant do on the fountains?
Like I said, add artistic, lighting, patina, more of the creative aspect of it. Dave would construct it, and he would do more of the, like I said, the artistic aspect of the fountain.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, well, let me back up for just a second. How would you, or Metro Sheet Metal, I should say, how would they get an order to create a fountain?
It would come through Joseph.
And would he bring them into the shop personally, or would you receive them in other ways?
No, he didn't come in. I don't think I recall him being there more than twice. So were you coming through Chase or online? Or faxing, faxed over?
Okay, do you remember occasionally seeing jobs faxed over?
Probably, because I think they would have the dimensions and the structure of the item.
Was the only fax machine for the office located in the area where you work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you indicated that Joseph came into the shop a couple of times, you believe. Is that right?
Yes.
And did you ever have an opportunity to see the defendant and Joseph interact with each other?
Yes.
And how did that appear to be to you?
Good. Yeah, nothing unusual.
Okay. And did you ever have an opportunity to see the defendant interact with Dave?
Yes.
And how did that go?
You mean overall? I think they got along well, but there were a couple of occasions where there was some hostile discussion.
Okay. Now, at some point, was there a disagreement between Dave and Joseph regarding the fountains and payment issues?
Joseph McStay,
Yes.
on a particular project or
Do you recall there being a meeting where Mr. Cicada, Mr. McStay, and I believe you and potentially the defendant sat down to discuss what the fountains were selling for?
Yes, I do recall a conversation like that.
Were you present at that meeting?
I believe so, yes.
And what was that issue in that meeting?
Well, maybe to clarify, I do know that Dave had issues with Joseph because Joseph wasn't being forthcoming as to how much he was charging for the fountains. And Dave was supposed to be getting a percentage of that, but he couldn't calculate the percentage because he didn't know how much the item was being sold for.
What type of based on your interactions with Joseph, can you tell us what type of a guy did he seem to be?
Most of my interaction with him would be on the phone.
Okay. Did he appear to be a little bit more laid back?
He did seem laid back, but he also seemed very conscientious about the projects.
Okay. When, to your knowledge, when Dave and Joseph McStay entered into that agreement, was there an actual written contract?
No, I don't believe so.
Is it your understanding that was a verbal discussion between them?
I do believe that, yes.
Okay. Did Joseph ever make any payments to Metro Sheet Metal that you were aware of?
Yes,
Would you be the individual that would frequently see those payments as they came in?
yes.
How would you receive those payments from Metro Sheet Metal? Or, I'm sorry, from Joseph to Metro Sheet Metal?
They would usually be in check form.
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 420C for identification, which is a packet of pages stapled together. And if you can just take a look through those. And for the record, these checks are dated starting 9/30/09 and ending February 1st of 2010. Can you just take a look at that packet of checks?
Just so we can be clear, is 420 the whole packet, one check is C, or is the whole packet 420C?
420C,
Is the whole packet?
correct.
Yeah, this looks pretty typical.
I'll just have you look through the whole thing, and then we'll put some of the checks up on the screen after you look at it.
Yeah, this looks familiar, yes.
Okay. And would these checks be consistent with the type of checks that you received from Joseph McStay?
Yes.
Can I get that overhead, please? No, for the computer, I'm sorry. So showing you some of the exhibits, some of the checks from the pages that you just went through. Would these be some of the checks that you received from Joseph McStay? We're looking at one dated October 28th, 2009, November 1st, 2009, November 16th, 2009, and another one for November 16th, 2009. Those were in the packet that you just looked at.
Yes, yes.
So these would be typical of checks that you would see from Joseph, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And would it be common for him to capitalize,
Your Honor, objection is deleting.
Overruled.
would it be common for him to capitalize the words Metro Sheet Metal?
You know, I don't recall. I mean, this looks very familiar, and I can't say that I can, that the capitalization is something I would have noticed.
Okay. Going on to the next page.
Before you do that, on the checks, on the bottom left of the check, there's a note where it says for, and there's a name. Does that relate to a particular project or fountain?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it would.
Okay. And it's about noon, so why don't we go ahead and take our noon recess at this point. We'll continue at this point when we come back at 1:30. Again, keep in mind we have additions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case. And we'll see everyone back at 1:30.